Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Roses are a beautiful addition to the garden. Today, we're going to plant a bare root rose. Also, you have to plan to have a successful garden. Learn what you need to consider before you choose your flowering plants. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Mr. Bill Dickerson. Mr. Bill is our rose expert, and Rick Pudwell will be joining me later. All right, Mr. Bill, let's talk about planting a bare root rose. What's that process?
Well, a bare root rose typically they ship them like that because you don't have to pay for soil.
Gotcha.
So they just wrap them up. You can get them usually at a discounted price. Now, typically, if you order from some of the big nurseries, they tell you to soak them in water with just a tad of bleach to kill any kind of germs that might have picked up from the, so you soak it for anywhere from 24 hours, 12 hours, you can leave it in there for 3 days.
Wow. Okay.
That helps hydrate the roots. Because when it comes, it just doesn't have any roots. It's just got the big main roots, which kind of balance out the canes on top. Now this has got
pretty moist.
Yeah, it's full of water.
Yeah.
This
is paper. Yeah. Look at that.
Now they've wrapped that pretty much with either pine fines or hardwood mulch, and you can see.
Yeah, look at the.
You can see that's going to be the, Mother Nature to feed the canes.
Nice.
Now for purposes, I don't know what's in there, and we'll just see what's.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of. That's why you go to a nursery and you get a really nice plant.
Gotcha.
Because here, there's...
Oh, it's not many at all.
I hadn't found the roots yet. This is kind of good this is the difference between getting a good potted rose that'll have canes on the top and the roots on the bottom will be the same size as the canes on the top.
Okay, got it.
And as you can see here, there's not a whole lot of food source. These leaves come from the roots.
Yeah.
And all the sugars and starches, it's fed from the roots to the leaves and up through the canes. This just don't have a whole lot of, so you kind of get what you pay for.
Oh yeah.
And what kind of concerns me is somebody will go buy one of these because it's only $6 or $7. Say, well, it didn't do very well.
Yeah.
Well, now we know why it didn't.
We know why. We know why. No food source. We know why.
I've never seen this. This is. I've opened a bunch of these up. Typically, if you order them from the online type nurseries, the canes will be about as long as here, but this size, and the roots will literally be that long.
Gotcha.
And sometimes I'll trim them back a little bit, but they've taken.
Yeah, sure you don't trim them back that far, right?
Yeah, it's going to take this plant. I mean, it's growing, and you see new canes. All of these will be canes that came from a bud eye. One here, one here, one here, and I thought it was good for a demonstration. But normally, I'd have canes like that, and I would. Wow. This is just almost humorous. I'd have canes down 1.5 feet. I'll add a little soil. Guess you can call that. I'll put some Epsom salt, sprinkle some of that. Yeah, you get what you pay for.
Oh yeah. It's a good example though.
I'll add a little more dirt.
There you go.
Just prop that up. Now, I'm gonna break that little one off the top.
Okay. Now, what about your fertilizer now?
Yeah.
I think that was gonna need some help.
Now, as small as the roots are, well,
Yeah.
a lot of times you can put, you know, some of the water solubles.
Okay.
Typically when you get a new bush, you want to go half strength. If it calls for a tablespoon to the gallon, you want to put a half a tablespoon to the gallon, because it's good for vigorous plants that are already established. But you take a plant like this, it could tend to burn some of that new, and you saw how fine and white they are. Add a little more dirt. Soggy dirt.
Yeah, soggy.
It's so soggy, I don't even know your soil would be offended. Because you want to use some of the soil that came out of it, at least a third. You can add any kind of amendments you want. Any compost or type materials are really good. Kind of pack it down some. Now this is a case where with no more roots, I don't want those to dry out.
Gotcha.
So any kind of mulch, pine fines or hardwood bark. Hardwood's a little less money, and I like it just as well. It breaks down quicker, and it adds amendments to the soil. And
So you pile it up again.
I'm piling it up,
Gotcha.
just so those canes keep some moisture in them. Right now we got plenty of moisture. But a normal, and I don't remember what that is, you know, if it gets dry, those canes will get dry. And that, you know, all of a sudden that plant will start wilting down, and sometimes it'll recover and sometimes it won't.
Okay.
And and then later on, as it comes up and bushes out, you can come in with the water hose and spray it with a strong stream and take it down a little bit. And by, you know, the end of May, starting of June, you're just going to have,
Put it on back. Okay.
you know, you're just going to pull it on back.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
If you don't, where you were going to get a cane, you'll get a root. Mother Nature's pretty strong-willed.
Now, does any of this need to be pruned? Is that okay? Or?
No, these are good,
This
and these are, you can see, there's a little brown on this side, and I'm gonna go ahead and prune it, and then I look at the cane, and I can see where there's just a little bit of brown on one side and it's starting.
Okay.
And this will start it fresh. Over here, this looks kind of, you want a good clean cut. And as we tell people, you know, you want to use a bypass instead of an anvil. And I've run into
Crush it, right? I got
people that's got an anvil, and it just mashes that cane, and it's going to die.
Right.
And then I'll sprinkle a little more product on the top. I see a little powder. That's probably, this has got a lot of microbial types, feathers, kelp.
Got the earthworm.
Worm casings. And that'll just go down into the soil. Now once this cane starts coming out, depending on the bloom, it takes about 40 days to go from a bare cane, a cane sprouts out, it'll get up to here, and it takes about 40 days before you'll get a bloom.
40 days.
Once you get that bloom, you deadhead it and you just cut down below it. And then it takes another 40 days to get that bloom. So it's one day your roses, you've got a lot of roses in your garden, like in May.
Right.
And then like the end of May, you've got a bunch of new growth that looks like this and no roses.
How about that? So the 40 days will pretty much get us to Mother's Day, so she can get roses for Mother's Day.
There you go. That's, you know, you get and typically roses bloom best in cool weather. The first one in May,
Yeah.
and the last one in about October, when the weather cools down. That's where you get the really big blooms. Once it gets hot, those blooms open up and fall apart before you get home from work.
Sure. Well, Mr. Bill, we appreciate the demonstration.
Well,
Bare root rose planting. How about that? Wish we didn't have that many roots, so appreciate that, right?
It did. Hopefully we'll look for more roots next time.
Hopefully so. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Cold frame. So this is a term we're hearing a lot more about these days.
Yeah. Well, you use a cold frame as a sort of a season extender. And a cold frame, typically, when people think of a cold frame, they kind of comes to mind that it's just something that out of blocks or concrete blocks or wood, and it has maybe a window sash over it or a transparent top. And it's usually, it tilts, and you open that up, and it's tilted or leaned, you know, it's higher to the north, but lower to the south, so that it catches, you know, the southern sun. During the fall and the early spring, it's like people can start cuttings. They can kind of protect plants from cold. They're not heated. That's the reason they're called a cold frame.
Right.
But it's just sort of a little plant protection, you know, for cool weather. A lot of people even overwinter some of their more tender plants in a cold frame. Yeah.
Sure. All right, Mr. Rick, let's talk about annuals and perennials, because guess what? Folks are ready and anxious to start planting now.
Well, they are, and it's getting to be that time of year.
Yeah.
You know, our last average frost usually is the 15th of April, but a lot of times it's way before that,
right.
You know, so we're at that time. I think the main thing when you're thinking about planting plants is really pick the site where you're going to grow things.
Okay.
If you think about it, some of the plants I brought today are shade perennials, and you know, of course they bloom early before the leaves are on the trees when they get the most light. And of course, if you just pick the first things that you want and don't think about where they're going to go, you might buy shade plants to put in the sun. And you know, you really don't want to plant most of the annuals till the soil gets a little warmer toward the middle of April.
Okay.
And so, you know, you really have to think about what you're going to plant. So just picking the site is really important.
Okay.
And then the next thing is figure out what's going to grow there. And part of that, also certain people have color schemes they want in their garden. You know, they want to know, you know, they want something red, white, and blue because of whatever reason, or yellow and purple, or whatever they want. So you need to think about that. And then also bloom times, because plants bloom at different times. There's perennials that bloom in the spring, some that bloom in the summer, some that bloom in the fall, some that are repeat bloomers, but most of them not. And of course, annuals bloom pretty much the whole season, almost from the time you plant them till frost, and most species. So getting the site selected, deciding what it's like. Is it well drained? Is it wet?
That's key these days.
You know, are you going to water frequently when the drought comes in the summer and all these sort of things? So you have to kind of plan for that. Obviously, there's plants that grow in dry sites, wet sites, soggy sites. So, you know, making the proper selection is really important.
Okay.
And then, you know, if you want a nice garden with something blooming all year round, you know, a good tact on that, and this goes in the category of trees and shrubs as well, is to visit a good nursery maybe once a month and see what's in bloom. You know, in our climate, there's things that bloom even in the winter. You know, witch hazels and camellias and a lot of autumnales, cherries, lots of stuff like that, and even like Lenten rose start in February and things like that. So if you pick something out at a nursery every month of the year, you'd pretty much have an all year round garden.
That's pretty good. Think about that before. Okay. All right. Makes sense.
And then the other thing I would worry about is proper soil preparation.
Without a doubt.
You know, and it depends what you're going to plant as to how you would amend it, but most of the time you want to be sure that the site is well drained for most things. You want to add some organic matter, the appropriate fertilizer, check the pH. Are they acid-loving plants or are they alkaline-loving plants? You know, I see lots of people that try to grow both in the same bed and wonder why some do well and some don't.
That's right. That's right. And I'm going to interject here, Mr. D. What, soil tests?
Yeah, don't guess soil tests. That's right.
Getting your soil tested would definitely help with that plant selection, for sure.
Agree.
Okay.
So those are all things to look for. And then if you're new to gardening, I think a lot of people tend to think too big right away.
Yes.
And they bite off more than they can chew, and then come summertime and it's time to weed and deadhead and all that stuff, and you're worn out. So I think pick the spots very carefully. You know, maybe near the front entrance to your house if you're somebody that works 9 to 5 and that's what you're going to see when you come home from work, or maybe near your deck or patio, or maybe you want to do a series of containers, but I'd locate them close to the house where you're going to apt to see them and water them, because you know in the summer if you forget, they don't last long.
They don't last long at all. You got that right.
Or maybe a view from a window where you sit in the house and look out when the air conditioning is on so you can actually see it. But pick your spots carefully and do your most color plantings in those locations, unless you're a real avid gardener or you're retired and you have lots of time and you can do it all.
Right.
So I think those are all important things to look at.
Okay. Now let's define for the folks, what's an annual?
Okay, an annual is a plant that could be grown from seed, or in some cases some tropical plants like lantanas, like here, where they're grown from cuttings.
Okay.
But usually they spend their whole life cycle in one season.
Okay.
So, they flower their hearts out, go to seed, and they die. Okay.
And what about perennials?
Perennials are plants usually that are herbaceous. In other words, they die to the ground in the winter, although there's some exceptions, but they're more like a shrub. But most perennials die to the ground in the winter. They live for a number of years. They flower at a specific time of the year. Some perennials, if you will deadhead them, will bloom more than once.
Okay.
So that means cutting off the spent blooms, of course, so they don't go to seed, because that plant wants to reproduce. And of course, if you can prevent that, it's going to flower again.
Okay. It's good. Good explanation. I like that. Now let's talk about some of the plants that you have here.
Okay. Well, I mentioned that shade perennials were blooming now. Also lots of bulbs are blooming now, which you planted in the fall. But the pink flower there is silene, and that's a nice shade perennial. And then in front of it is a blue columbine. Now these are young plants, they're just starting to grow, they're going to get bigger. And then the plant with the green leaves and the little bell-like flowers that are just forming is a red-leafed form of Solomon seal called ruby slippers, which is a new one. Most of the Solomon seal you see are green-stemmed with the white bells, or there's what they call false Solomon seal, which is variegated foliage, and it looks almost identical to the true Solomon seal.
Okay. Now, you said shade. So what do we mean by shade?
Okay. Shade.
That's always a question we get.
Right. And there's degrees of shade, and you can have too much. Okay. If shade is from a tree, you're also competing with tree roots.
Right.
So, your bed preparation there is going to be different than if you're doing a planting in the sun where there aren't tree roots.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So probably if you're planting close to the tree for whatever reason, your best bet is to dig fairly sizable holes. If you've hit a big root, adjust your planting site, amend that soil as well as you can, and plant the plants there.
Okay.
If it's really dense shade, you're best to stay with things that really are not flowering, like hostas. Everybody knows hostas with the colorful foliage. Ferns, of course, will take deep shade. There's other plants that will, epimediums, there's a lot of plants that will really thrive in the shade. If it's moving shade where the little sunlight filters through, a lot of these flowering plants will do really well. The notable thing is that they flower in the spring before the trees leaf out.
Right.
Okay, but they still have to complete their life cycle, so they need some sun to actually, mature and grow flower buds for the following year. So
no, that's good.
Those are degrees of shade.
Good explanation. All right, so what about the other plants that you have?
Okay, that's a bleeding heart, which is also a shade perennial, and the flowers do look a little bit like a heart. And again, it just blooms in the early spring, but very nice. Most of the summer and fall blooming perennials are sun plants.
Oh, okay.
So, things like daylilies and phlox and rudbeckias, echinaceas, asters, those are summer and fall blooming. So, by planting correctly, and by that I'm saying in drifts that are kind of mixed, figuring height into consideration, you could have a perennial border that bloomed all year round. But then it's nice to mix a few annuals in there, because by repeating the same annual throughout the bed, you'll have bursts of color the whole season. And that makes a very pleasing effect versus just a big mass of one thing.
How about that? I need you to come to my house and help me out. that sounds
well, I've been doing it for a big space for a long time.
And what do we have here too as well?
These are lantana, very like popular lantanas. Plant.
Yes.
It's a butterfly plant, so people like that. And this is Kufia. The common name is cigar plant, because you see the little flowers kind of look like that. There's many different forms. There's one called bat-faced Kufia that, if you look at it closely, looks like a little bat's face with the ears. These are long blooming plants. They're technically tropical plants because they're grown from cuttings, but we treat them as annuals, plant them in the spring, let them go till fall. This particular lantana is called Miss Huff, which is pretty much perennial in our climate.
Oh, it is, okay.
It will die to the ground like an herbaceous perennial and then come back from the roots. Lantanas will grow in hot sun, like in a parking lot where there's asphalt or along a sidewalk, and that's really useful in our climate because that's a tough place to have annual color.
All right.
It's just like you notice that the best pansies that bloom through the winter are in parking lots because they've got all that heat sink from the asphalt and the concrete.
That's why mine looks so good.
Yeah, but the ones that are out in lawn areas and stuff don't do quite as well because it's colder.
It's cold. All right, okay. That
So
makes sense.
anyway, just you got to look for those little niches in your landscape at home. There's some places where certain things are going to do better than other things, and you just have to figure that out.
How about that? Mr. Reed, we appreciate you being here today.
Oh, you're most
Thank
welcome.
you much.
Thank you.
Much. Good stuff.
I've had this aloe vera plant since this last fall. All winter, it has been sitting in a windowsill. Well, it's time to get this poor thing transplanted into a bigger container. We'll add some soil to this clay pot. Slide this plant out, and you see it's got some circling roots. We'll do a little bit of this, trying to get these roots to stop circling. I would check twice a year, in the spring and the fall, when you're bringing it inside or when you're taking it back outside, to see if it needs to be in a larger container. And then we can plant it in our pot and add just a little bit of soil around the edges. And you notice this pot isn't a whole lot bigger than the container that it was in, because aloe veras don't need a whole lot of moisture. They're a succulent, and so I don't want to put too much soil around the roots, because I want it to stay on what I call the dry side of moist. And there, this plant is a lot happier and with a little more root room.
All right, Joellen, this is our Q&A segment. You ready?
I'm ready.
These are great questions. Yeah. All right, let's get to the first one, okay?
Okay.
Purchased and planted an amber jubilee 9-bark tree last fall. I was anticipating the promised beautiful fall color, but alas, that did not happen. The leaves are green with large black spots. Is this a fungus or some other disease? Did I do something wrong to cause this? And is this going to be a continual problem? And this is E. Sawyer from Central Ohio. Right? So 9-bark, beautiful plant.
It is a beautiful plant.
So what do you think about that?
Well, one thing, I think it might be stressed because it's a new transplant.
Okay.
So a lot of it could be environmental factors that are causing the problems.
Okay.
But the black on them reminds me of anthracnose a little bit.
Me too.
And I'm wondering what the weather has been like there, because if you had cool, wet weather in the spring or even in August, September, it could cause that kind of, mottling on the leaves.
Right. I would agree with that. That's what it looks like to me. It kind of follows the veins a little bit. So it looks like anthracnose. We don't know the time of year.
No,
of
I
course.
wonder when she took that picture. I don't know.
And there's something else I noticed from the picture too. It looks like it's pretty close, to the outside wall. So you wonder if if it gets good air circulation through there to dry those leaves off.
Oh, that's
right.
true too.
So that's something that I noticed from the picture. But yeah, fungus. Yeah. So I mean, there's of course some fungicides that you could use, but we like to start with the cultural practices first, right?
I think that would be better. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, start with those cultural practices, and then, if you want to use a fungicide, there's some copper-based fungicides, Daconil or something that you can use. But culturally, let's make sure, right?
Good airflow, yes.
Good airflows. Yeah, you're probably going to have to move it,
Well, that's what I was wondering.
Right.
If it's a young tree and she's just planted it, she needs to look at the mature size of the tree, how wide is it going to get, and then place the center of the trunk so that it still has airflow around the structure.
Okay. That's
with
good.
that, if she, as much as she can,
Right.
because that's going to help the tree.
Okay. That's good. And the tree can be saved. It can be saved. Yeah.
It's fine.
Beautiful 9-bark tree. Nice. All right, thank you for that question. All right, hope that helped you out. Here's our next viewer email. 10 years ago, I planted camellias, and they have done very well, till now. There's a strange pattern on the bark of one of the plants. I have pruned it into a tree shape so that it would show above the camellias in front of it. It blooms profusely in late winter with pink blooms. I have it planted against the north-facing side of the house, and it gets dappled sun as soon as the sun clears the house around noon. The other camellias do not appear to have this on their bark. What is going on? And this is Chris in Nashville. Appreciate the details. We know when the sun is coming over.
Yes,
I like
great.
this. We're planting in front of it, to kind of hide that. So
and
this is good.
And they've got it on the north side.
On the north side, right, facing the side of the house.
Yeah,
apple
so
sun.
it's getting some, okay.
Nice blooms.
Yeah.
This is good. So what do we think that is, though? We've seen that
before. Unfortunately, I've seen that a lot.
I've seen it as well.
He's wildlife at its greatest. It's a yellow-bellied sapsucker.
Yellow-bellied, yes.
They came and did that to my viburnum, and of course there's a shrub.
Right.
So when they started circling, a few of the limbs ended up dying, but not the whole plant.
Right.
Unfortunately, his has got a nice trunk, and that gets to be a little bit more difficult. But yeah, that's wildlife at its greatest.
It's wildlife, yeah. I have that similar damage to my hollies, right in front of my door. Almost perfect, perfect lines.
It's amazing, isn't it?
The way they do that. And I've seen them a couple of times just out the window kind of looking. But yeah, just a couple of limbs, have died from that damage. But for the most part, the tree is going to be fine. It's going to be fine. So your camellias, I think, will be fine. Look, they are protected, so yeah, don't run out there and try to shoot them or anything like that.
No.
Right. But yeah, the tree will be fine. I don't think there's anything you need to do to try to deter the yellow-bellied sapsucker from doing that damage.
Trying to find some food.
Right. Yeah, so I think they'll be fine. But Chris, we appreciate that. Yeah, the details in that.
I love it.
And the picture, good picture. So we appreciate
good
that. So yeah, don't be alarmed, yellow-bellied sapsucker. You can read on that if you want to, but yeah, it's not gonna be a problem. All right, Joellen, that was fun.
Yes, it was.
Thank you for being here. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is questions@familyplotgarden.com. And the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee, 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. Today we planted roses, which is only the first step. Go to familyplotgarden.com to learn more about rose care. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.